Hi, hier sind Sascha von MobileGeeks und Fabi von techstage.de und wir haben Nick Woodley hier, der Chefdesigner. What are you doing at Huawei?
I'm
Hi, Nick.
the chief designer at the UK design office. So it's a relatively new office, opened a year ago. We have a team of 10 people. And we're trying to feed European influence into the headquarters design team in Shenzhen. Working very closely together. We're often there, they often come here to sort of broaden each other's minds, learn from one another.
So what you're doing is taking a Chinese design and bringing it to, or putting into European design patterns?
In the past, these regional offices were, because people were making a lot more regional variations, a lot of people were making maybe 90 phones a year, some of these big companies, whereas now everybody is making maybe 10 if they're lucky. So you need to get the input and the feedback from as many parts of the globe as you possibly can and feed all this in, work together and try and find something that you all love. In the past, we would get design briefs like, it's this region, it's this age group, it's this gender, and now it's the target market is as many people as possible in as many countries.
When we're looking at the Huawei history, is in terms of a very unique design statement. I always had a feeling it just wasn't there in a Chinese manufacturer, but right now you're coming out with something that, to me, kind of feels that you leapfrogged your competitors right now. So I'm pretty sure this is not something that you invented in the last 2 months, right?
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about the process of going through a design like this? How long does it take you to come up with something like the SMP6?
At least a year from conception to launch. Things can be faster if they're more familiar, but if you're trying to push design and engineering, the initial concept of it's not as clear-cut anymore of someone saying, I really want to make something that looks like this. It's a constant battle. It's more, there's an initial principle of what you're trying to achieve, and then managing that or defending that through the process. And that, you have to know which components people are going to choose. They may change size, and then that will have a direct. These things are vacuum packed. So one component changes size, the whole product grows, and you have to rejig everything all over again. So the way I like to describe it is, the engineers who deal with the insides of these are amazing, but often there's 3 or 4 people focused entirely on, say, the speaker or the camera or the antenna performance, and that is so complicated. They are completely focused on that. They don't care what the camera team are up to, that's their job. So the designers are often the only people looking at the thing as a whole. So you're defending the original intent, whether that comes from a market desire or from CEO or a designer's dream. You're there to kind of guide all of these other people and try and keep a harmonious result to get to something like this.
That's actually very interesting because, I think basically smartphone designs are somehow limited to what technology can do right now, especially for you as a designer who wants to really do some crazy designs and some very interesting features, right?
It's interesting because it's certainly not like the car design world. There's no designer ego anymore. You certainly don't have the freedom to be sketching great big curves. We're on micro level. Whenever the guys in the studio sort of start feeling a bit, there's not enough freedom, not enough space. The example I always use is watches. They are smaller than these guys, very similar in construction. There's however many 100,000 varieties out there. They're all made the same, they're all the same form factor, and yet they manage to find richness and differentiation and keep moving somewhere. Yes, it's tighter than, say, architecture, but it's definitely not the end. There's still huge amounts of potential.
Nevertheless, we are right now from my personal perspective in a state where everyone would like to compete with superlatives like the thinnest, the fastest, and whatever, and especially Huawei is like that. And then you come up with a phone which is really, really beautiful. And my colleague Daniel just had a very, very good question. We have the iPhone 5 here, and it looked really nice in the beginning and very nicely. Now you have a lot of scratches and whatever. So when do you think you will show up with a design which stands for a couple of months, for example, or for the lifetime of a phone, that it can be so great, even if you use it day by day and without a bumper, for example?
Well, it's a very interesting topic. I mean, the positive spin you would put on this wear would be it's becoming yours. You know, if you think of like an old belt buckle or a watch, you start to love these scratches. The reason we choose materials like metal is it's only quality materials where that patina is the word, I think. You know, as it gets older, it becomes more beautiful. If you start with, say, painted plastic, the paint comes off, it reveals the plastic, and then this is when people get frustrated. So that's one way, is to use good materials in the first place. And the other thing is, I often explain it to friends who are designers in other industries, these things are incredible. They are your watch, they're your camera, they're your alarm clock, they're your recipe book, they are everything. And people, we joke about it, I mean, they are literally glued to these things all the time. So there's some very difficult choices. It's, if you're going to hold something that's indestructible, say, you know, ceramic, keranite, thing, they will worry about antenna performance or the weight. It'll become very heavy if it's very strong. And so it's, as I say on stage, is balance is everything. It's, you know, it needs to feel high quality but not too heavy. It needs to be strong but not uncomfortable to hold. It's just constantly taking all of these needs. And again, as I say, these devices have to please everybody aesthetically, regionally, gender. So it's many things to and this is why things sort of tend to end up coming to this quite simple level. People don't want a very expressive, over-the-top device because they will tire of it.
That could be a challenge, right? For in the future, in terms of design, to find materials, whatever. HTC tried it as well with a couple of different ways of manufacturing models, but that could be the right challenge, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about it on a daily basis in the studio and with headquarters. I mean, really, the future is materials and detailing. The overall form, we know, is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. The only room to maneuver now is material science. We're all frantically talking to every materials development company we can, trying to race to find one before a competitor does, or find a way of treating it in a different way. It's all about materials. Absolutely.
Now, well, my personal opinion on this device, because I had a chance to play around with it for an hour or so, and I was actually really blown away by the build quality of it and that you achieved. And I'm pretty good in knowing what materials and surfaces will look like in a couple of months, and I'm very confident that you won't face these problems that Apple had with the iPhone 5 in terms of the scratches because of the aluminum that they use, and especially the finish, because that looks a little bit different. But your approach is completely different, in my opinion. What I would love to hear is, besides all the technical specifications and about the design process in general, as a designer itself, to see your product somewhere on a shelf, right? Or to see your work and somehow also your art, because I think designers are artists in general. What would you like to hear from a user that is using your products, telling you about your products?
I mean, the simplistic thing is that they love it, but not just in the shallow level. You know when somebody loves something. I have kitchen products in my house that every time I take it out of the drawer, it gives me some pleasure, just its simplicity or its materials. That sort of bond. I mean, it sounds crazy, but these things are so personal. They are so part of your life that if you can get love, that's obviously the ideal.
That's a very good statement, and I actually think that this should be the way we're going to end this interview, because this is a beautiful phone. In my opinion, right now, one of the best looking and best built phones that are available, that are going to be available very soon. Absolutely. Right? And you did an amazing job to differentiate from your competitors. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to meet you.
Thank you. That was great.